Publishing for Profit podcast is brought to you by Ghostwriters & Co. Earn more money by publishing better content and learn how to increase your thought leadership so you can build your brand. Head over to ghostwritersandco.com for more information. That's ghostwritersandco.com. And now, your host, Joel Mark Harris.
Hello and welcome to episode number 19. I'm your host, Joel Mark Harris. Today we have a great guest on, Amy Sanyal. He is the founder of Uncommoners Club and he does marketing consulting. So we talk all about marketing today. He does webinar funnels through paid click advertising, and he will tell you a little bit about how he does it and some tips that you can take away and implement in your business. On a side note, Amy and I have been friends for many years. We first met on TEDx Vancouver, which is obviously a TED event. I was doing all the copy and email writing while he did the social media. So we've known each other for a long time, and it's great to have him on the show. So enjoy this wide-ranging conversation. Hi, Amy. How's it going today?
Doing really well. How are you?
Good. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. And I want to start. So creativity is a big topic. And I know you've created a networking group, events around creative people. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But what I want to first start off, can somebody be more creative, and how do you think about creativity?
Yeah, 100%. I believe that people can be more creative. I think that we all have talents, each and every one of us, and they may be in different areas. So we have different starting points for how good we are at a thing. But any sort of dedication to a craft takes practice. And so to be more creative just means to put in more practice. And during the last few months, I picked up my guitar a little bit more than usual, and I decided I would take a little course and practice every day. And I found that just so quickly you can play things faster, right? And I think that's applicable to writing. It's applicable to design, whatever your area of interest is.
What about the people who say that I'm not a creative person? Is there one or a couple ways that they can help develop that creative muscle?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with mindset. So I had a coach once that put me on to the differences between fixed and growth mindset, and it's something that I try to teach my kids and my niece. When you say you're not something or I can't do something, that's a very limited belief. You've fixed that to be a true thing. When you say I'm learning to do something, or I'm getting better at this, or I'm working on this, it just opens up the possibility, right? So I think that's really the biggest thing, is just how do you define it? Is this something that you are just getting better at, still working on, or is this something you're not good at? You get to decide how you just define that. So I think it's a sneaky one. It has nothing to do with your actual ability. It's how you think about it and how much time you're willing to put towards it, because anything worthwhile takes time.
And what about people who are creative in a certain aspect, let's say painting, right? How can they take those talents and make money and make it more of a profession and less of a hobby?
Big, broad question. I think that one of the best things that anybody can learn is how to sell, right? How to sell, how to communicate. Because if you are serious about taking up a profession in creative, in a creative area, whether that's fine arts or more applied arts, you need to be able to discern what makes you different, what makes you special, why somebody should invest their hard-earned dollars in what you have. So it's one of the sneakiest things, because most creatives don't go into business thinking they want to be a salesperson, but that becomes more important than their talent or skills very, very quickly. There are a lot of really great writers, really great designers, whatever, out there that are broke, right? Whereas there are a lot of mediocre companies that scale, or freelancers that make it work because they're really good at selling, right? And so I think that's the skill to develop.
So is that also just a mindset, do you think, that, I think we're told at a young age, you can't be creative and, and make money from it, from a lot of talent, writing, art, even photography, I think too, So do you think that is something that society has falsely betrayed or portrayed?
Yeah, 100%. I think that most people get into a creative field, whether that's commercial or fine art, as I say, is with the thought that this is not going to be a big moneymaker, right? They go into it straight for the passion, and that's just a fallacy, right? It's not true. There are people that make a lot of money doing the same thing, and so the story you tell yourself matters a lot, and where you put your attention matters a lot. So um, I think, I've touched on the fact that you need to put the time in to learn new skills, whether that's your creative skills or your business skills, and then how you do it matters as well, right? So just putting time into something isn't a surefire way to make an improvement. You have to make sure that you're reading the right material, following the right processes, and so that takes a little bit of research and a little bit of instruction sometimes, but practicing the right way matters too.
That's great. So I want to switch gears a little bit. You started out as a photographer, you switched to social media, now a marketing consultant. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey and why you ended up where you are?
Yeah, for sure. So, you touched on the story people tell. So when I was in high school, I wanted to be a musician. I was a singer-songwriter, and I just didn't see a path. The people in my life were like, "Oh, yeah, it's great. You're pretty good, but become an accountant." And so I went to school thinking maybe I would study some accounting. I was a horrible student, never really showed up, and I decided to take a quote unquote break from school a couple years in and go work. And so I got a job in accounting, and in an accounting department. And it was a really good job. I was like 19, and I was in a job that I could ride out for the rest of my career. And I just was dying. It sucked so bad, right? And so at that time, I discovered photography, bought my first like legit camera, and I was like, oh, this is great. It had all the aspects that I love about music and the self-expression, but I could also see how I could serve other people. And so 6 months after picking up my first camera, I quit that job that I had and became a full-time photographer. So that was kind of my first leap into business. It was a gateway drug for me, because I started many businesses along the way, from e-com to SaaS products, a few different ones. And but all the while I was a photographer, and people started to come up and say, listen, I'm watching what you're doing to market your business and these other businesses. Can you help me? And so that's when the Uncommoners Club was founded, as a side of the desk project to help the people in my network. And eventually I realized that the impact that I was making with the Uncommoners Club was what really fulfilled me. It was long-term um, impact that could really change the life of a small business owner and their team. And so I decided to put it all into the Uncommoners Club, and that's our main focus now.
Did you take any formal training in either marketing or photography, or is that something you learned on the fly or on the job?
I think I'd be what people would call as self-taught, but it's a it's kind of a lie of a term, right? So, I mean, I've read a lot, and I've also invested a lot in mentorship and coaching and in learning. And so, um, no, I didn't go to get a degree in it, but I've had a lot of people help me along my way.
What are maybe some three, let's say three things or a couple things that your mentors taught you that you still use today?
So, the sales process. So I've mentioned this before. It took me a really long time to understand the importance of process in sales. I'm talking like a decade. Um, and once I understood, it was like unlocking a door, right? Like if I could stand out from my competitors in the first conversation, I'm talking the first 5 minutes, and lead people down a pleasurable experience that gets them what they want. I can charge more. I can do projects that are more exciting to me, and just have a better rapport with my clients than I did before. And I think that was such a huge takeaway there. The importance of writing is something that, it's something that's always been. I actually became a photographer because I was a blogger, or I was able to get access to things through writing. And as my career developed, that relationship to writing has only grown stronger to the point where now our agency, I mean, I think its heart and soul lies in direct response copywriting. Like that's that, sure, we place ads and create webinars and things like that, but without the writing, it would be worthless, right? And so I think learn how to write, learn sales copy, is the other side of. I'm talking a lot about sales. The third thing I think is never put yourself in a position to be desperate. It's very hard to take this to heart, because if you need money, it feels like you're desperate. So make sure you reserve enough money that you can say no when you need to. And sometimes I forget this, even now, but um, if you remember that you're never desperate for a client, then you can keep your relationship to that client in a healthy way. When you need them to say yes, you lose all the cards, and you start doing things you regret, and start feeling ill towards that client, even though it's not really their fault, right? So make sure you have the ability to say no.
I'd like to talk about sales copy or copy in general. What is something that you could recommend? Maybe it's a resource, or just some tips that people can use that they can take away and use in their own business.
A really approachable book on copy and storytelling is Building a Story Brand. You familiar with that one?
No, actually
No.
not.
It's a pretty fun read, and it's not written for copywriters. It's written for business owners. So it touches on brand. It touches on how you might lay out your website, that type of thing. So I think that's a really nice kind of start to things. And then if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, Gary Halbert is a great copywriter to research and look up. He's got a bunch of letters that you can Google that are good reading. John Carlton is a great author on copywriting. Dan Kennedy. So these are direct response copywriters that did a lot of direct mail pieces that were multi-million dollar successes that we can learn from today.
And so you mentioned um, people who have influenced you in your life and role models and mentors. Who do you think has influenced you the most in your career path?
I'd probably say my grandfather is actually who I'm named for. I never saw him when he was working. He was already retired by the time I came along, but the reputation he had in his community was one of a generous person that connects people not for any self-benefit, but because it just benefits the community, and that's who he wanted to be. And when he died, I think this is when I really learned it, is when he died, I was in Shanghai. I was away. I wasn't here in Vancouver, wasn't able to come to his funeral. And one of my ways of dealing with this kind of heartache was I put a website up in his honor, and just put some of the eulogies that were spoken onto that site and some photos. And somebody contacted me. He was like a VP at Pepsi, and was like, "Oh, I just found out through that website that Ami had died," and he brought me out of the slums. I was literally living in a slum, and he became my mentor. He like helped me get to college, uh, paid my way through part of it, and it's because of him that I'm able to do what I do now, and my family is able to do what they do now. And that was like such a crazy story that I'd never heard. Like, I never knew he had this relationship to his community before. And so that was a pretty meaningful moment that I hadn't kind of realized how impactful it was at the time. But I think what I generate a lot of joy from now is exactly that, is connecting people to resources and people and opportunities that they may not otherwise have. Um, so that was probably the thing that impacted me the
Awesome.
most.
That's a really amazing story for
Mhm.
sure. So speaking about connecting, you started a group called Creative Pulse. I guess it's meeting all online now, but can you tell me what is Creative Pulse and why you started it?
Yeah, Creative Pulse is a volunteer-run organization that helps commercial creatives. As we've talked about, most creative people get into the business, and they are either freelancers that can't pay their bills, or they're getting paid all right, but they're working 12, 14 hours a day. Um, and this is the expectation in our industry. And so we aim to help creatives thrive and build businesses that they're proud of, and careers that they're proud of. So we produce several events every year, usually one a month. And um, They're around three pillars. We want to help people share inspiration, spark new collaborations, and just genuinely connect to like-minded folks. And so we've been doing this for several years here in Vancouver, and we're now kind of growing online to a larger community across North America.
So I guess COVID has helped with that.
Yeah, it kind of lined up with some of our goals.
Hmm.
In some ways, it's been a challenge, if I'm being honest. Especially because it's not just COVID we're dealing with. We're also in the middle of a, civil rights movement as well,
Hmm.
and so it's been a balance of how much do you want to promote at this time, as well as how do you give value to the community when there's a lot of noise.
Hmm.
So we actually started up a new group, a Facebook group, which has been really valuable for people to just keep the conversation going in between events and socials that we run.
So what? How should companies market themselves in this kind of strange environment, and what sort of what tips would you give to businesses who aren't really sure, should I say this, should I not, what is my message?
It's interesting you ask. I was just speaking about this at another event yesterday. So I think one of the challenges that people face when thinking about their digital presence in general, and especially now, is, am I going to have like 1 million followers for this to be even worthwhile? And for most small business owners, that's a very daunting fact. um, if they're feeling challenged by this, it's usually because they don't actually enjoy kind of jumping on the hamster wheel that is a lot of marketing, social, especially, even content marketing for that matter. And so I think take some of the pressure off is the first thing, right? There's a guy named Kevin Kelly. He wrote a pretty famous essay called "A Thousand True Fans." In it, are you familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So for context, Kevin Kelly founded Wired magazine, and this essay, he talks about how we don't need 1 million followers as small business owners. We only need 1,000 people who believe what we believe and where our brand is a part of their identity. And so that number is not arbitrary. It's, basically if somebody spends $100 with you, there's 1,000 people who do that, you've got $100,000 in revenue. And so you can scale whatever number of true fans you need according to your business and the margins of that business, but it just makes it much more approachable. So let's take the number out. It's not 1 million followers, it's 1,000 people who we really connect with. The other thing is, it doesn't have to be TikTok. If you don't like TikTok, don't go on TikTok. That's fine. Maybe, some of the hidden ones that people don't take advantage of are, forums, groups, Facebook groups, Slack channels, places where you can have more one-to-one conversations and become recognized as the person who gives value. That's a lot more approachable for a lot of people. So think expansively. Often that can be a gateway for people, right? If I'm really good at providing value in this Slack channel and I understand what makes people tick, then I can share the best parts of that on other channels, right? And you start getting excited about it. So I think that's a really good starting point. That's a lot more approachable for people who are feeling daunted by digital marketing.
I think that's amazing advice. That's really good. So I want to go back a little bit about Creative Pulse. You do a lot of events. What goes into creating something as large as Creative Pulse? I know you speak at other events. So what are some key aspects?
So there's a few different aspects to organizing an event. The simplest to talk about is logistics. Obviously, you need a space. You need to consider the capacity, the AV, the technology aspects, right? So after that comes kind of food and beverage as another kind of bucket to deal with. And then the most important is what happens at the event, right? So our typical event is a talk and social. That's the most common type that we run. We have a few others, but that's our fallback. And a talk and social usually is a short, around 20-minute presentation by somebody who's either kind of a peer in the industry or a leader in the industry. And then we have an interactive component. Then we have Q&A, and then into a social where we have pizza and beer. Now, this format is something that was pretty deliberate in that my feeling is, most content is available online. You do not have to leave your house or put on pants to digest content. If you're going to an event, the value of that event is in the connections that you make. But people are shy, especially creative people. I've learned there are more introverts than non. I think the career lends itself well to introverts. And so the interactive component is probably the most important part because it allows people to play with a concept in a safe space with other people that they're like-minded, but they don't necessarily know. And those small groups can then go into the social having a bit of a bridge. There's a bit of a connection already made. So when we go into the social, which is the most important part of the event, in my opinion, the connections are already being made, and we've got an atmosphere that's a little bit more like a house party and never like a networking event, right? We actually never use the word networking in any of our copy in any event that we ever run, because nobody is like drawn to that word. Whereas, connecting to friends and like-minded people, that's what we want.
And so what's next for Creative Pulse, and what are you trying to achieve the next 6 months?
Well, it's an interesting time to be asking that question. Right now, we are taking a bit of a break to assess that. So this is our first summer we're taking off. I think it's a good one to take off for our team. And then in September, we'll be picking up again with our talks and socials. So, obviously that's first thing. Can we kind of keep on the momentum that we've had in the past? We usually get about 100 people out at our events. It would be great to grow that number now that we have access to the world. Anybody can join online. So that's the first thing. Can we grow? The other piece that I'm assessing is what are the other opportunities, other ways we can provide value to the audience, whether that's through formal mentorship. I ran a coaching program around sales and marketing for freelancers last year. That was very successful. So thinking about running that again. So there's a few great opportunities that we're looking at, as well as just structurally, how do we organize our team so that as we grow, it's fair and effective.
Awesome. What are some of entrepreneurs, business owners' biggest fails in marketing, and is there through your mentorship and through working in the industry for so long, is there a common thread and things that some pitfalls that these business owners can avoid?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of duty, obligation that a lot of business owners feel towards marketing, as well as resistance. And so that is kind of a deadly combination, because you end up doing things very tactically, in that, like, you're just checking a box, and then you're frustrated when it doesn't work. So you're posting on Instagram every day, or you're just doing activities like that with no real sense of, how does this fit my greater strategy, my greater goals. um, and so that's a deadly thing, because it means that you're guaranteed that you're never going to be happy with that time investment or money investment. So understanding that strategy comes before tactics is a lesson that most entrepreneurs need to understand painfully at a certain point. Um, and Yeah, I'd say that's the biggest part of it. Was there a second part of that question that I didn't answer? I'm not
No,
sure.
that's
Okay,
that's
yeah.
good. Um, so how do you think about ROI on social media? Because it can be really easy to get so caught up in the likes and the shares and
Yeah.
how many views you have, but that at the end of the day doesn't pay the bills. So what are some ROIs you would recommend businesses look at, especially on social media?
Yeah, it's sort of a case by case. So our agency specializes in paid social, right? So we aren't here managing your social media channels and your daily posting. One of the reasons is because it's really hard to track ROI. Now, it's not impossible. Say if you have a e-commerce business, you can track the number of clicks coming from social channels going to your website and making purchases, right? That's the most direct thing. You can do that with a consultative style business. How many people are going to your contact page and booking a call? So you have to understand, what is the action you're trying to drive, and how am I going to track that action? With um, digital uh, endeavors, it's easy enough to do the tracking, but a lot of the time we get distracted by things like likes and comments, which are important, but they're secondary KPIs, right? I can have a million likes. I could just buy them. I could do it today, right? Just buy a million likes. Great. Got a million likes. Did I make a sale? Like, did I even get close to making a sale? Like, so at this point, for a lot of our clients, unless you're really trying to get to that influencer level, or a larger scale kind of e-com style business, but for our consultative style clients, more and more, they're wanting social to be a secondary thing. What I mean by that is, a client shouldn't be turned off by a lack of presence, right?
Mm.
In many cases, they don't have any presence at all on their social channels. They're only focused on the customer journey from paid advertising. Um, so there's a little more wiggle room than there was in the past, I think. But don't just do things because you feel like you have to and everybody says you do.
Yes, good advice for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, so you mentioned you focus on paid social, and I believe that is to mainly to promote webinars and then a phone call. Can
Yeah.
you tell me about why you chose that process, that marketing funnel, um, and why companies should consider it?
Because it works really well. I mean, that's really it. We've tested a lot of different types of funnels, and maybe one day this won't work that well. We'll see. But right now, um, I look at a few things. Can I create something that's going to have a long shelf life? Because most people come to me and they're tired of creating stuff on that hamster wheel that I was talking about earlier today. Um, so a lot of the stuff we create has a very long shelf life. The webinar piece doesn't need to get changed because it's created with the idea that it's going to be long lasting. Maybe the ad itself needs some refreshing. You're going to change the photo, test a video, change the copy up a little bit. But generally, even the ads run a really long time, right? So that's refreshing when it comes to marketing, because a lot of campaigns have a very short shelf life. So that's the first reason. Second reason is, as I said before, I think we are very good long form communicators. And so it lends itself very well to webinars, because we can take somebody's expertise and package it in a way that has a sense of flow to it, a sense of value to it, and produce the result, which is, people wanting to jump on a call with that person and seeing that as an opportunity to learn and grow, not as an opportunity to lose money.
And so what sort of content do you put in the webinar?
So our webinars are structured as commercial teaching. So that phrase comes from a book called The Challenger Sale. It's a great book, highly recommend. In commercial teaching, we lead to a solution. We don't start with it. So we aren't saying the reason you need to buy, ghostwriting services or X, Y, and Z. We start with an understanding of their problem, reframing it in a way that's refreshing and not being regurgitated all over the world. And then, leading them down a path of education so that by the time we come to the end, they're interested in speaking further. The second aspect I think that I don't see very often is we name the elephant, which is the reason why we want to jump on the call. So I'll say this, right? The reason why we do these free consultation calls is twofold. First of all, some people are going to be able to do this on their own. So we want to help you, point you to resources, and make sure you understand how to do that. That's great if you can do that. And some other people are going to be a fit for working with us. And so we can explore that if that makes sense, right? So by naming that elephant, you kind of relax people, right? Like, okay, there's no mystery here. I know why I'm getting in this call, and I know that it's not going to be a high pressure sales environment. So I think those are kind of some good starting points for creating webinars, leading to a solution and then naming the elephant.
Awesome. So I want to dive a little bit deeper on this, if I may. Do you primarily use just Facebook and Instagram for your pay-per-click, or is there other channels depending on, I guess, the clientele?
Yeah, it's a question we get all the time. We start with Facebook and Instagram because time and time again, that's where we see the best ROI. And then once we've got that up and running, we explore other channels, and we don't limit to ourselves to which. I say we don't limit to ourselves, but the thing that we try to do with our social campaigns is we aren't looking for people who already have an understanding of their problem and desired solution. So that's why we don't do a ton of SEO. We don't do any SEO or even search ads for that matter. We are looking to help people frame their problem. So that your marriage is falling apart, but you don't quite know what to do about it and what your solution might look like. And so this ad and webinar and consultation is going to help you with that. So that once you get to the end of that journey, if you haven't signed up, when you're looking for things online, competitive solutions, you're not really going to find one that's going to be laid up in the way that we have. So we're putting ourselves in an advantage by marketing to clients that are a little earlier in that cycle.
And so do you use Twitter and LinkedIn?
Yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn, we've used in the past. Like I say, they can work, but ROI wise, it's almost always smarter across industries to start with Facebook and Instagram. Now, there's definitely exceptions to that, but as a general rule, I'd say I'll start with the non-obvious. Sometimes for the B2B clients, Facebook and Instagram.
And what tools do you use for your webinars? Is it GoToWebinar, or is there something that you like?
So we're agnostic when it comes to tools. I hate kind of bloating our clients with software that's kind of only used for one reason. So the first step in many cases with our clients is an assessment of what's in their tool belt already. If we can get away with it, sometimes they're subscribers of different webinar services and it works, then great. Right now we do use GoToWebinar, but Stealth is a tool we use. It's not that common. but is
Yeah,
really
I
good
haven't
for
heard of it before.
the evergreen kind of stuff.
Mm.
So yeah, we're doing some stuff with stealth right now.
Awesome. So this is a question I like to ask all my the people who I interview. And you mentioned several books already, but is there a favorite or a book that has most influenced you?
Um, I read quite a bit, so it's very hard for me to answer this question without it being kind of flavor of the day. I think one of the like kind of time and time again books that I come back to and maybe gift to others is How to Win Friends and Influence People, kind of an oldie and a goodie. A modern version of that, which I also kind of think about and talk about every once in a while, especially the people I mentor, is Never Eat Alone.
Mm,
Are you familiar with that one?
yes, I
Keith
think so.
Ferrazzi.
Yes.
It's similar concepts, a little bit more modern. In it, one of the nuggets I like is, no matter what level somebody reaches in their career, there are three main interests which you should tune into, are their health, their wealth, and their family. So if you're networking or meeting somebody for the first time, first of all, don't talk about yourself that much, but try to get the person to talk about their challenges in one of those three areas. And if you can follow up with ways that can help in those three categories, you're much more likely to deepen that connection in a meaningful way.
Awesome. Ami, thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Amy Sanyal. Find me there. You can find me on most social channels, Amy Sanyal. CreativePulse.co is our website, and uncommonersclub.com.
Awesome. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you for the invite, Joel. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Publishing for Profit. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.